a powerful, all like, oh man, that's it. That's the missing key. I know it's not like that, but I'm just saying, like, in order to create an organization where innovation is part of the culture, you have to, guess what? Innovate. And it starts with you. I don't care where you're at on the ladder. I don't care if you're mid-level management. I don't care if you're an entry-level employee, especially if you're the leader, you have to start innovating. Welcome back to the Culture Based Podcast. I'm Dustin. He's Blake. Episode 82 to round out Q1. It's quarter for people who aren't in the biz. Today we're going to talk about how to encourage innovation in the workplace. But before we do that, I want to remind you that we're here to help leaders know what they're about, show where they're going, and develop a scalable team to get them there. You can follow us on Instagram and all YouTube, LinkedIn, places like that at The Culture Base, BASE. And you can also find us on the World Wide Webs at the culturebase.com. And you know what? While you're there on the culturebase.com, do you know what they should do while they're there, Blake?
Go ahead and tell them, please.
Oh, okay. That means I forgot. While they're there, they want to go ahead and get our free ebook. This is the Scalability Playbook. Sorry, I just realized I left the other thing on too. Scalability Playbook. This is proven methods for developing high performance teams, which we're all out here trying to do. This is a free ebook. It's completely free. Doesn't cost you anything. Just go to culturebase.com/resources to pick that up today. If you're watching on YouTube, hello there. We're so glad that you're here. We'd love for you to hit the thumbs up button. That's the like, subscribe, and ring the bell while you're at it, so that you're notified every time we drop new content, just like this podcast, every single week. If you're listening on an audio podcast platform, would love a 5-star rating and review on whatever platform that you're listening on. That would be soups helpful. The kids still say that? They still shorten words like that?
The Yinskis?
The
I don't know.
I liked it when we did that. I don't know if that's a thing or not, but if it's not, I say bring it back. Soup's helpful. It was just fun. It made you smile for no reason. Anyway, like I said, today we're going to get into how to encourage innovation in the workplace. But before we do that, Blake, I think it's important that we distinguish, because we had an episode just a few episodes ago where we talked about creativity in the workplace. So we've talked in previous episodes about creativity in the workplace, but I think today it's important that we distinguish the difference between innovation and creativity. And I intentionally did not go over this with Blake before we got into the recording, because I wanted to kind of hear our different viewpoints on this. And my viewpoint, the differentiator between innovation and creativity is this: creativity is problem solving for problems that already exist. Where for me, innovation is problem solving for or is creating for problems that will exist, if that makes sense. For me, it's a current us problem is creativity. A future us problem is innovation. That's how I distinguish the two. What do you think, Blake?
Interesting. I think I'm a little different. I think for me, innovation is problem solving all the way around, because you can innovate processes that already exist. You can innovate with eliminating, automating, delegating in that said process. You can bring something that doesn't exist into the world of innovation. Sure.
#focus funnel
for me is just the act of not always doing it the way it's always been done.
That's good.
It's more using your experiences, using your gifts, using your abilities in such a way to make something beautiful or enhanced or something like that. That's I think beautiful. And innovation do go hand in hand a lot of times.
Yeah.
It's a certain part of your brain on both of those types of things. But yeah, I think that's mine.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, there needs to be a clear distinction between the two, so that you can know when you're in a creative mode and you know when you're in an innovative mode. To talk a little bit about something that we've talked on this podcast a lot before with notes days, something that Blake leads his team through. To me, correct me if I'm wrong, Blake, but that's an innovation opportunity, right?
Yeah, I wonder if innovation is the thing and creativity is the how, right? Like, but the means by which you would go at it.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. Let's go with that. If you disagree, this podcast is not for you. But that's where we're going to come from now on.
Yeah.
All right. So we're talking today, like I said, about how to encourage innovation in the workplace. So let's dive right into the problem if we do not introduce innovation in the workplace.
So right out the gate, one of the biggest problems is everyone loves change. Not everyone hates changes.
Wait. Say that again.
Yeah, everyone hates change in our work.
No, say everyone loves change.
Everyone loves change. Yeah.
Oh my
False. But I think that we naturally get into the grooves of doing things and we're okay with whatever status quo becomes because we've gotten used to it, right? Change is uncomfortable. So one of the problems I would say to start out the gate is that we're walking into an idea of something that's uncomfortable. Just because you're excited about it does not mean everybody else is excited about it. In fact, they're anti-excited about it. So right out the gate, you're coming into a scenario that you probably need to have a better perspective of, because it isn't just saying, here's what we're doing, blah, 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 we're done. Because that's corporate culture right there, right? That's the corporate, I'm walking in telling you what we're doing because we're brilliant and you're going to do it. And if you don't, there's the door. Like don't do that. Okay. Because you probably hated whatever was presented to you the first time too. So let's just stop there. Our teams tend to be like, if your job is to produce 800 widgets a day, and I come in and I say, hey, we're going to change the way we've made 800 widgets a day, and you still got to hit 800 widgets a day. Okay, I didn't fill in any of the blanks. Everyone's going to be risk averse to that, because now if I don't hit 800 widgets a day, because now that's the thesis, I've got to hit 800 widgets a day. Now everyone's terrified. We're not the most creative when we're terrified, right? So we're creating more problems, but teams tend to be more risk adverse. We get into process fixation. We get stuck on how something's always been done. And what's crazy is we may find out a part of an innovation is eliminating part of a process, not even adding something or a new thing. It's just eliminating part of a process. But people will get so fixed on how the process is supposed to be and the way it's always been done that we get into these rigid cultures that are not willing to get creative at a solution. Okay. I think another idea is we can talk about things too a lot in really like innovative ways, but I think sometimes companies lack pathways to implement innovative ideas. So there's another problem is we don't know the right things we need to implement and how to implement it, because we're playing with innovation, which means nobody's got the roadmap for this. We are the roadmap. So we got to understand people in that roadmap, and we got to understand the innovation we're bringing. But I will say this, and I say this almost daily at all my organizations. Innovation is coming up with a product is 10%, implementation of that is 90%. Okay. We have to understand that no innovation can outdo the people running that innovation if they don't understand it. Okay.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of problems there.
It's my favorite. Thomas, is it Thomas Edison? Yeah. Genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. Right. And so you can have the idea, but if you don't do anything about it, innovation, if you don't do anything about it, it just stays an idea and it never actually helps anything to begin with. So, anything else you want to add to the problem?
I don't think so.
Awesome. Let's get into the solution then. All right. So I feel like every time we get to the solution on this podcast, we talk about create this type of pipeline for this type of thing and create this type of framework. And I know it always sounds repetitive, and I know it always sounds more daunting than it really needs to be. But listen, just like in last episode where we talked about stories breed stories, innovation breeds innovation. And you could really say that about anything, right? Troublemakers breed troublemakers. So you could say that about it. It's true for everything, right? Boogers breed boogers, right? Like it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't whatever it's but it's true. It's
Yeah.
funny because it's true. And if you know it to be true, then like we can all recognize, I'm going to use the Craig Groeschel thing here. We can all agree that boogers breed boogers and innovation breeds innovation. So if you know that, we all agree to that, we all state that that's as much of a fact as gravity is, then why not start innovating? I know it's not like a powerful all like, oh man, that's it, that's the missing key. I know it's not like that, but I'm just saying, like, in order to create an organization where innovation is part of the culture, you have to, guess what, innovate. And it starts with you. I don't care where you're at on the ladder. I don't care if you're mid-level management. I don't care if you're an entry-level employee, especially if you're the leader. You have to start innovating. What you got, Blake?
Yeah, what Dustin just said probably just went over a lot of people's head as a common understanding. Like, oh yeah, that's common sense. Common sense is not common action. Okay. Which means you probably aren't going to do what he just said. But what that practically looks like is not just being the idea guy. Okay. You want innovation to breed into your organization. First off, maybe make it a core value. Like if it is really that important for your team to innovate and be okay with change and be okay with flexibility, then you probably need to implement that.
Yeah.
So don't just show innovation. This is that whole 1% inspiration, 99% in perspiration. Don't just show innovation. You've got to show what you're innovating.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not just like, oh, I got this idea. Now go make it happen. You can't do that. Like you've got to get to a point where you say, like, hey, I dove into this for 8 hours the other day. Look at what I created. Like,
Yeah.
what do you think about this? How do we make it better? And you're bringing them into the fold of innovation. If
Yeah.
I just say, hey, these things are going to be awesome, they can do all these things, neat. But when you can show someone innovation and show someone how something's changing, that's different. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, the belief starts building behind it.
Yeah. And like Blake is saying, if it's really important to you, building it into your culture values is a great idea. And with that, we always talk on here, another one of our solutions for today. We always talk on here about measure. You want to measure like your KPIs, yes, but really more of like, hey, annual review situations should be centered around your culture values, right? You want to measure what you say is important, or you want to reward or discipline based on what you say is important. So with that, I think that you need to, if innovation is that big of a deal for you, you need to start tracking and measuring the process, or tracking and measuring the outcomes, the ROI for the innovations in your organization. So if I'm sitting down with Blake and we're having our annual review, one of the things I'm going to look at with him is how innovative were you this year? And it's not going to be like, oh man, I had all these ideas, 1%. I'm going to say I'm going to ask it again. How innovative were you this year? And we're going to look at it, and you're going to tell me, and oh, we started developing this. We're halfway through developing this, and we finished developing this new thing. Great. Innovation across the board. Love it. So it's creating those pillars and those checkpoints throughout the way for you to be able to say, listen, if innovation truly is an important aspect for you, or important aspect for your organization, then we're going to start measuring it, right? Because if you're not measuring it, then it's just people go, oh well, then it must not be that important. What I really need to focus on is the stuff that keeps me employed, right? What I really need to focus on is the stuff that makes me look good and keeps me climbing up the corporate ladder. And if they're not measuring innovation, then I'm not going to innovate. I'm not going to waste my time with it. I got too many other things in the other column to deal with. Anything else you would add to the solution there, Blake?
Nope. Let's get into the action. I just got to respect that seamless transition right there that I said, let's get into the action, and you just nail it. Like, I love it.
It was good.
Anyway, so for leaders, this, like, you need to pay attention if you're a leader, because it's not like, yeah, the team needs to listen to this one. Nope, you need to listen. It's on you. Number one, we just talked about it a minute ago, model creative thinking. Okay, you need to be the one showing how to make these things happen. You need to not just show it, but you need to, if you're saying innovation's important, if it's important, it gets scheduled. Okay. Do you schedule innovation? Do you schedule creativity? If the answer is no, then you don't actually value it. We value that which we put aside time for. Okay. And we could say, I'll tell you what's important by looking at your bank account.
Calendar,
More importantly, I tell you what's important by looking at your calendar. Okay.
calendar,
Like,
all day.
whatever it is there. So create innovation time blocks for yourself weekly, and maybe they're smaller. Monthly, maybe it's a little bigger. Quarterly, go get away somewhere. Yearly, go to a mountain and figure it out. Like, just create those times where you can be doing those things. Create trips for yourself where you're going to get around like-minded people who are excited about this stuff. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Innovation is really hard for a leader when you're in an organization that, just because they're not where you're at, okay, and you cannot fault them for not being where you are at this point, but they're not buying in, and that's okay. Okay,
Yeah.
buy-in takes time. Sometimes, though, we need to go get out off the ground level, and we need to go up into the clouds with people who know the clouds.
Yeah.
And then you sit with the people who know the clouds, and you get to just dream and innovate in different ways. Okay. So both are important, but if you're not scheduling time for the other, then that's a problem. You need to also, and this one's big and it's hard. Okay. Because it's hard when a P&L is attached to what I'm about to say. We need to celebrate those instructive failures. If you are innovating, you will have loss. Okay. It's all investment and outcome, right? So innovation takes investment. You will have loss, but your gain might be way more than the loss. But to act like you won't have any loss is stupid. Okay. I don't even know the right word for it. Stupid's it. If you think I can, we're going to jump into this and we're not going to have any failure, no loss of time, no loss of resource. That's not true. But your net win, yeah, you're probably, if you do the right amount of investment, the right amount of loss, you celebrate the loss, your people buy in that you're okay with celebrating certain calculated losses. I'll say calculated losses there. Then in the end, your outcome and your payoff could probably be 10x what it is. Okay. But if you're only about the short-term P&L mentality, you're probably going to struggle with that one. The next one is, you need to, as a team, you need to build diverse teams. Okay. A lot of times we have the whole phrase, birds of a feather flock together. Okay. But it's also important to get some hamsters in there, to get some different animals into the mix. Okay. To have almost a Noah's Ark kind of mentality where you've just got a little bit of everything, because it starts to create different innovation. Like, innovation comes from thousands and thousands of different perspectives, looking from different angles. And the only way you can look from a different angle is you've got a different experience. So we're taking everyone's history that they've had, everyone's experiences that they've had, and we're bringing it all together, and we're saying, how do we solve this problem? People have such cool ideas. But when you think, you know what, I'm a construction guy, I'm just going to only ask construction people how to fix this problem. Well, then there's that whole common, if everyone's a hammer, everything's a nail. Like, that's becomes our solution. You need different perspectives coming into that. And then my last two for leaders are going to sound completely opposite, but I don't care. First one is, you need to remove barriers to implementation. Okay. So when you're bringing things into the mix, when you're bringing innovation in, you need to remove barriers that are going to be, I told you so's. Yeah, this won't work because of this. Remove barriers to help them get there. But on the flip side, my last one is create barriers. Because I've learned recently that a barrierless a barrierless road essentially is just a field. Like, that's not the case. Barriers actually are the thing that causes us to innovate.
That's right.
Perfect example. We were in one of our notes days, and there was this idea, and it's an idea we're moving forward with, because we're basically saying, hey, for the next foreseeable future, we're not, we're a construction company, electrical construction. We're not going to have a warehouse. We're seeing what it would take to not have a warehouse. And because we've already tried an experiment of having a warehouse, which is important. We already tried the experiment of having a warehouse, and it cost us $750,000 in cost. I don't like that. So what about trying it a different way? And so I brought this up, and right out the gate, everyone was like, no, we can't because of this. We can't because of this. We can't because of this. Okay. So right out the gate, we had those frustrations. And I go, hey guys, as a leader, I'm not telling you, can we? I'm actually positionally having to lean in a little and tell you we're not. We are not going to have this for at least the next 6 months. And then let's see what happens there. All of a sudden, everyone's mindset changed when they knew there was already a final barrier and they could see the final barrier and they heard the reasons why, which believe me, they still push back against. And I want them to. I think it's important. It identifies the areas we need to fix. But as soon as I said, oh, no, hold on, guys, we're not doing it. Now, innovate. All of a sudden, we got some of the most creative ideas, like ones where I was like talking, standing up, and I just was like, and I just sat down like, oh my gosh, I never would have thought of that. I haven't been out in the field in a while. My experience isn't there. That's a great idea. But it didn't come until I created a barrier of saying we're not doing this.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say for leaders.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo what Blake's saying there, I work with creative people all the time for my other business where we're helping creative people operate to their most efficient level so that they can scale as well, right? So, but one of the things we talk about all the time is that creative people will often say, and innovative people the same way, don't put me in a box, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is their fear talking. That's not really what they want. They do want barriers. They do want limitations because limitations breed innovation, right? Say that again. Limitations breed innovation every single time. If someone comes to me and says, all right, I want to send a mailer marketing piece for our organization, go. And I go, well, who do we want to send it to? What message do we want to say? What's the call to action? All that stuff. All of those questions that I have, I'm asking for barriers because otherwise I could just send out a card to any random address with the company's logo on it and say mission accomplished. But that doesn't accomplish what we're trying to do here, right? You have to have the barriers. You got to give me something. That's what I always say that when we're talking with creative people is like, you got to give me something to work on here. You got to give me something to innovate with. And so you have to have that. And I think it goes both ways too. Like was talking about the leaders, talking about the team members too. You have to practice. Sometimes you need to self-impose those limitations in order to get yourself innovating, right? Your boss may not be good at giving you the barriers, and you may need to say, you know what? Okay, imagine that we have zero budget. That's a great barrier. You know why? Your leader will love you if you come up with a $0 solution. Right. So just put some barriers on yourself to be able to do that and contribute to those ideas, volunteer for those projects, volunteer for innovation, and just show up with innovation. Leaders don't want team members that show up with problems. They want team members that show up with solutions. So innovate beforehand, come to the table with a solution. Now, I know many of you are listening to this going, well, I don't even know what the meeting is about. That's a leader problem. They need to deal with that. You should have an agenda before the meeting starts. But back to your involvement there, you need to be ready at a moment's notice. Excuse me, ready at a moment's notice to be brilliant. And there is a book for this that I'm going to plug. It is called The Accidental Creative. Now, I know we're not talking about creativity. We're talking about innovation. But it's a mindset, right? Of problem solving. But at the beginning, we talked about both are kind of problem solving, right? Creativity is problem solving. Innovation is problem solving. So how do you be brilliant at a moment's notice? Is a fantastic book by Todd Henry called The Accidental Creative that'll teach you these are the practices that you can put into place so that when you get into a meeting that you had no context to at all, and they look to you and go, Bill, what are your thoughts? You can be innovative immediately. You can be creative immediately. Anything you would add to that, Blake?
No, that was beautiful.
Oh, you call me beautiful. All right. So next episode, next episode, it's going to be a lot of Blake talking. He's done a lot of research on this topic. We're going to get into understanding generational differences in the workforce. This is big now more than ever. This is a huge one. Gather your team, listen and watch this, and have a discussion after this next episode. We cannot wait to be with you on that episode of the Culture Based Podcast. Have a great weekend.